The widow was considered the ugliest in the town until the Millionaire station owner told her this. In a small country town, there was a widow whom everyone called the ugliest. The pretty women mocked her, humiliated her in the town square, and no one believed that anyone could ever see her differently. She lived with her head down, working from dawn, raising her 2 children alone in a humble little cottage that barely stood upright. No one spoke to her, no one respected her, and certainly no one would choose her. But what no one knew was that a man was observing her in silence. A millionaire station owner who passed through the town and saw what others refused to see. And one day, in front of everyone, he did something that left the pretty women stunned. He stopped in front of the widow and uttered words that would change everything forever. What followed was a silent war. Threatening letters, cruel lies, attacks in the dark. Someone was determined to destroy her before she could find happiness. Tell us below in the comments which part of Australia you're listening from. Click the like button and let's get on with the story. The wind whipped up dust on the main street of Mudgee when Eleanor Ellie Davies came out of Old Bob's general store with a bag of flour and 2 kilos of snags, sausage. She wore the same faded cotton dress as always, her hair pulled back in a fraying ponytail, and she walked with her head slightly bowed, like someone who learned to make herself small so as not to bother anyone. She was 38. But life had etched premature wrinkles around her eyes and the corners of her mouth. Her sun-beaten skin was weathered from the hours spent in the paddocks, where she worked from dawn, and her rough hands told the story of a woman who had never known rest. Since the death of her husband 5 years ago, in an accident on the Pacific Highway near Newcastle, Ellie had raised her 2 children, Ethan, 14, and little Lily, 11, alone. They lived in a small weatherboard house on the edge of town, with a rusty corrugated iron roof and a small yard where they kept 3 scrawny chooks. The entire town knew her story, but they didn't remember it with compassion. They remembered it with mockery. "There goes the plain one," the women murmured when she passed the butcher shop. Poor kids, having that mother. Sienna Harrington and Chelsea Taylor, the 2 prettiest women in town, according to themselves and the men who followed them with their eyes, were sitting on the bench in the town square when Ellie crossed in front of them. Sienna wore a fitted yellow dress and high designer heels that clattered against the pavement. Chelsea wore perfect makeup and a low-cut blouse that revealed a fake gold necklace. Both let out a sharp laugh when they saw Ellie. "Look at that," Sienna said loud enough for Ellie to hear. "How dare she go out looking like that? If I had that face, I'd stay locked inside." Chelsea covered her mouth with feigned modesty. "Oh, come on, mate, don't be cruel, although you're right. Not with all the money in the world would anyone look twice at her." Ellie clutched the bag against her chest and kept walking. She didn't respond. She never did. She had learned that silence hurt less than words. She turned the corner onto the dirt road that led to her house, and that's when she heard the slow trot of a horse behind her. She moved to the side of the road without turning around. She knew the station hands often passed this way toward the high country, and she didn't want to obstruct them, but the horse stopped beside her. She looked up in surprise and saw a tall man, about 45, with a wide-brimmed Akubra hat and an impeccably clean work shirt. He rode a good-breed stock horse. She recognized him immediately. It was Marcus Mark O'Connell, the owner of O'Connell Station, one of the largest properties in the region. They said he had land from Bathurst to the Blue Mountains. "A rich man, an important man." He looked at her with calm, unhurried eyes. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Davies." Ellie lowered her gaze. "Good afternoon, Mr. O'Connell." Mark didn't move. The horse snorted softly. "You're heading home?" "Yes, sir." "Allow me to walk with you. The road is lonely." Ellie felt a lump in her throat. No one walked with her. No one paid her any attention. And certainly not a man like him. She thought it was a cruel joke, another humiliation disguised as courtesy. But when she raised her eyes, she saw something in Mark's gaze that she couldn't name. It wasn't pity. It wasn't mockery. It was something different, something no one had shown her in years. "It's not necessary, sir. It's close. I insist." And without waiting for a reply, Mark dismounted his horse and began walking beside her, holding the reins with one hand. Ellie walked in silence, her heart pounding, feeling the stares of the neighbors peeking from their windows. She knew that tomorrow the whole town would be talking about this, and she knew it wouldn't be anything good. When they arrived in front of her house, Ellie murmured an almost inaudible, "Thank you," and quickly went inside, closing the wooden door behind her. Mark stood outside for a moment, looking at the humble cottage, the yard, the chooks pecking at the dry dirt. Then he mounted his horse and trotted away toward the high country. But what Ellie didn't know, what no one in the town knew, was that Mark O'Connell had been observing her for 3 years. 3 years watching her help old missus. Peterson carry her firewood. 3 years watching her share her meager lunch with the kids on the road. 3 years watching her endure the mockery with dignity, without responding, without breaking. And in those 3 years, Mark had made a decision that was about to change everything. The next day, when the sun barely began to warm the pavement of the square, Mark O'Connell arrived in town mounted on his best horse. He wasn't alone. 2 of his trusted stockmen accompanied him. He stopped in front of old Bob's general store, right where the town's women gathered every morning to shop and gossip. Sienna and Chelsea were there, of course, in their new dresses and with their loud laughter. Mark dismounted and walked directly toward the group. All conversations ceased. Silence fell over the square like a stone. "Good morning," Mark said with a firm voice. "I've come looking for Mrs. Eleanor Davies. Does anyone know where I can find her?" Sienna blinked, confused. Chelsea let out a nervous laugh. "Ellie, the widow?" "Yes, her." "Well, she must be at her house. Mr. O'Connell, why are you looking for her?" Mark stared at them fixedly without smiling. "That is between her and me." And without another word, he mounted his horse and headed toward Ellie's house. Behind him, the women remained frozen, whispering amongst themselves, trying to understand what had just happened. Ellie was sweeping the patio when she heard the horse's hooves. She stepped out with the broom in her hand, her heart pounding hard in her chest. Mark stood in front of her door with his hat in his hand and a serious expression. "Mrs. Davies," he said with a clear voice. "I need to speak with you. It's important." She swallowed. "Did something bad happen, sir?" "No, nothing bad." Mark looked her straight in the eye. "I have come to ask your permission to call on you, to get to know you, because I have admired you for some time, and I believe it is time you knew it." Ellie's world stopped. The words made no sense. No one admired her. No one sought her out, and least of all a man like him. She opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came out. She could only stare at him in disbelief. While down the road, hidden behind the corners, several townswomen watched the scene with wide eyes and open mouths. The news raced through Mudgee like the wind sweeps dry leaves in autumn. By lunchtime, there wasn't a single corner of the town that wasn't talking about the same thing. Mark O'Connell, the region's richest station owner, the man who could choose any woman from Bathurst or Orange, had asked permission to court Eleanor Davies, the plain widow everyone despised. Sienna Harrington was furious. She paced her living room, her heels clicking on the ceramic floor, while Chelsea Taylor watched her from the sofa with a distraught face. "It doesn't make sense," Sienna repeated for the 5th time, clenching her fists. "What does that woman have? What can he see in her? She's plain, poor, uneducated, dresses like a farmhand. She doesn't even try to look nice." Chelsea bit her lip, feeling equally offended. "It must be a game, a bet. Rich men do things like that for fun. You'll see, in a few days he'll get bored and dump her." But deep down, both knew that something in Mark's gaze when he spoke Ellie's name wasn't a game, it was determination. Meanwhile, in the weatherboard cottage on the edge of town, Ellie couldn't stop trembling. She sat on the only chair they had in the kitchen, her hands on her knees, staring at the dirt floor without seeing anything. Ethan and Lily watched her from the bedroom doorway, not daring to ask. "Mom," Ethan finally said, approaching cautiously. "Is it true what they're saying, that Mr. O'Connell came looking for you?" Ellie looked up. Her eyes were moist. "Yes, son. And what does he want?" She didn't know what to answer, how to explain to a 14-year-old boy that a man like Mark O'Connell had said he admired her, how to tell him that she herself didn't understand it, that she didn't believe it, that she expected to wake up from a cruel dream at any moment. "I don't know yet," she finally murmured. "But whatever it is, don't worry, nothing will change." But she was wrong. Everything was about to change. 2 days later, as evening fell, Mark returned. This time he brought a wicker basket filled with fresh fruit, freshly baked bread, and a whole roasted chicken that was still steaming. He knocked on the door with his knuckles, and when Ellie opened it, he smiled with a simplicity that took her breath away. "Good evening, Mrs. Davies. I brought you this. I thought the kids might like it." Ellie looked at the basket, then at him, and felt tears welling up. It had been years since anyone had given them a gift. It had been years since anyone had thought of her children. "Mr. O'Connell, I can't accept this." "Of course you can. And please, call me Mark." He extended the basket toward her. "It's not charity. It's a gift between friends." Friends. That word sounded strange on the lips of a man like him, addressed to someone like her. But the way he said it, with sincerity, without condescension, made something inside Ellie begin to loosen. She took the basket with trembling hands. "Thank you," she whispered. May I come in? I'd like to meet your children. Ellie hesitated, looking into her humble home. The dirt floor, the peeling walls, the old furniture, everything screamed poverty. But Mark had already taken a step forward, and she didn't have the courage to stop him. Ethan and Lily were in the room, peering through the frayed curtain. When they saw Mark enter, they froze. He took off his hat and crouched a little to be at their height. "G'day. You must be Ethan and Lily. Your mum has told me a lot about you." That was a lie. Ellie had barely spoken to him, but the lie was kind, and the children relaxed a little. "Is it true you have horses, sir?" Ethan asked timidly. "Lots of them, and cattle, and sheep. One day, if your mum gives me permission, I'll take you to see the station. Would you like that?" Ethan's eyes lit up. Lily smiled for the first time in a long time. Ellie watched them from the kitchen entrance, her heart heavy, not understanding why this man was doing all of this. When Mark said goodbye that night, after dark, he stopped in front of Ellie in the doorway. The sky was full of stars, and the air smelled of damp earth from the rain that had fallen in the high country. "Ellie," he said in a low voice, using her name without Mrs. for the first time. "I know you don't believe me. I know you think this is a mistake or a joke, but it's not." She looked at him, unable to hold his gaze for long. "Why me?" she asked in a thin voice. "There are so many pretty women in town. Young women, without children, without character." Mark interrupted firmly. "Women without substance. Women who only see with their eyes, but not with their soul." He took a step closer. "I have been watching you for 3 years, Ellie. 3 years watching you help people without expecting anything in return. How you endure the mockery with dignity. How you raise your children with love, even though you have next to nothing. That is beauty. That is what is worthwhile, and that is what I want by my side." Ellie felt her legs trembling. No one had ever spoken to her like that in her whole life. No one had ever seen her like that. "I'm not beautiful," she murmured, lowering her gaze. Mark gently lifted her chin, forcing her to look at him. "That is what they have made you believe, but I see something different, and soon the rest of the world will see it too." He said goodbye with a nod and mounted his horse. Ellie stayed in the doorway, her heart beating so loud she could hear it in her ears. Mark's visits became constant. Every 2 or 3 days, he appeared with something. A gift for the children, timber to repair the roof, seeds for the veggie patch. But more than the gifts, he brought conversation. He brought laughter. He brought a presence that filled Ellie's empty house with something she had forgotten. Hope. In the town, the fury grew. Sienna and Chelsea no longer limited themselves to whispering. Now they spoke openly with venom in every word. "She's a witch," Sienna said in the butcher shop, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She did something to him. A black magic spell. There's no other explanation." "Poor Mark," Chelsea added with false compassion. "He's bewitched. Someone should warn him before he does something crazy." But Mark wasn't bewitched. He was in love, and he was tired of seeing how the town treated the woman he loved. One Friday afternoon, when the market was full and all the families were buying what they needed for the weekend, Mark rode his horse into the central square. He dismounted slowly, walked to the center, right in front of the sandstone fountain, and raised his voice so everyone could hear. "Good afternoon, Mudgy neighbors. I have something important to say." The conversation stopped. The women stopped haggling. The men stopped loading bags. Everyone turned toward him. Sienna and Chelsea were nearby, their eyes wide, holding their breath. Mark looked around, sure of himself, with the authority of someone who knows his worth and what he wants. Then he spoke loud and clear. "In 1 month, I am going to marry Mrs. Eleanor Davies, and I want all of you to witness that I make this decision with a full heart and a clear mind. She will be my wife, the mistress of O'Connell Station, and I expect that from today onward, you will give her the respect she has always deserved." The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved, no one breathed. And then, from the back of the square, someone started to clap. It was old Bob, the old storekeeper who had always seen everything in silence. Then he was joined by Mrs. Peterson, the old woman Ellie helped with the firewood, and then, one by one, the farm workers, the humble graziers, those who knew what true worth was, began to clap too. But Sienna and Chelsea didn't clap. They remained frozen, with pale faces and clenched hands. Feeling the world they knew begin to crumble beneath their feet, Mark mounted his horse and headed toward Ellie's house, leaving behind a shocked town and 2 women who, for the first time in their lives, understood what humiliation felt like. When Ellie heard Mark's footsteps approaching her door that afternoon, she came out into the yard, wiping her hands on her apron. He dismounted, and walked toward her with a smile that lit up his entire face. "It's done," he simply said. "I told the town we're getting married." Ellie felt the ground move beneath her feet. "What? You heard. In 1 month you will be my wife, if you accept, of course." She looked at him, searching for any sign of doubt, of regret. But there was none of that. There was only certainty, only love. And then, for the first time in 5 years, Eleanor Davies began to cry. Not from sadness, not from pain, but from something she had forgotten existed. Relief, hope, love. "Yes," she whispered through tears. "Yes, I accept." Mark hugged her right there in the dirt yard, with the chooks pecking around and the children peering from the window with enormous smiles. But what none of them knew was that the next day, when Mark arrived to take Ellie to town to buy her wedding dress, he would find something that would change everything. An anonymous letter slipped under Ellie's door, with crooked letters and words full of hatred, threatening to ruin the wedding and destroy her happiness if she didn't stay away from Mark O'Connell immediately. Ellie found the letter at dawn when she went out to throw corn to the chooks. The white envelope was lying next to the door frame, as if someone had dropped it there in the middle of the night. She picked it up with trembling hands, feeling the weight of something bad before even opening it. Inside, in slanted, cramped handwriting, it said, "Stupid widow, do you really think a man like Mark O'Connell will marry you? He's using you, he's mocking you, and when he gets tired, he'll leave you worse off than you were before. If you have any dignity, stay away from him before it's too late. No one wants you here. No one has ever wanted you. And if you marry him, we will make you pay for every day of your miserable life. This is a warning, there will not be another." Ellie's hands trembled so much that the letter fell to the ground. She stood there, with her heart pounding in her throat, feeling fear climb up her back. It wasn't physical fear. It was something worse. It was the fear of believing in something good and having it snatched away. It was the fear that everything was a lie, as the letter said. She went inside the house and hid the paper in the bottom of an old drawer beneath her clothes. She didn't want Ethan or Lily to see it. She didn't want Mark to know, because a part of her, the part that had been humiliated for years, the part that had learned not to expect anything good, began to wonder if the letter was right. When Mark arrived that morning, mounted on his horse with a smile on his face and a package wrapped in brown paper under his arm, Ellie went out to meet him with a forced smile. He noticed something immediately. "Are you all right?" he asked, dismounting his horse and approaching her with a frown. "Yes," Ellie lied, looking away. "Just tired." Mark didn't press, but he studied her with those calm eyes that seemed to see more than she wanted to show. He held out the package. "I brought you this. Open it." Ellie unwrapped the paper carefully. Inside was a soft, light blue fabric with embroidery on the neck and sleeves. A dress. A beautiful dress. The kind of dress she had never worn, or even imagined wearing. "It's for you to wear today," Mark said softly. "We're going to town. I want you to choose what you need for the wedding, and I want you to start getting used to being treated as you deserve." Ellie felt a lump in her throat. She wanted to tell him about the letter. She wanted to ask him if it was true, if everything was a game, if he really loved her. But the words didn't come out. She only nodded and went inside to change. When she came out wearing the dress, Mark stood still. It was the first time he had seen her in anything other than her worn-out clothes. The light blue made her brown skin glow. The simple cut of the dress highlighted her slender but strong figure. And although she still wore her hair in the same ponytail as always, something in her had changed. Something was beginning to awaken. "You look beautiful," Mark said in a husky voice. Ellie lowered her gaze, feeling exposed. "Don't lie, Mr. O'Connell. It's not a lie. And stop calling me sir. I'm going to be your husband soon." They mounted the horse together. She sat in front, and he sat behind, holding her with one arm around her waist. The ride to town was silent, but not uncomfortable. Ellie felt the warmth of Mark against her back, the smell of leather and clean earth on his clothes, and for a moment, she allowed the fear to subside. When they arrived at the square, all eyes were fixed on them. Mark dismounted first, and then helped Ellie down, taking her hand naturally, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. They walked together toward the drapery shop of Mrs. Cooper, an older woman who had been sewing dresses for the town's families for 40 years. Sienna and Chelsea were outside the bakery with their arms crossed and their gazes sharp as knives. When they saw Ellie in the new dress, on Mark's arm, something dark crossed their faces. "Look at that," Sienna murmured with disdain. "She's already dressing like a princess, but a chook in peacock feathers is still a chook." Chelsea let out a harsh laugh. Give it time. When Mark realizes his mistake, she'll come crawling back. But Mark wasn't going to realize any mistake, because there was none. Inside the shop, Mrs. Cooper greeted Ellie with eyes bright with emotion. She was one of the few people in town who had always treated the widow with respect. "Mrs. Davies, what a joy to see you. Mr. O'Connell told me about the wedding. We're going to make you the most beautiful dress you have ever seen. For the next 2 hours, Mrs." Cooper took measurements, showed fabrics, and drew designs. Mark watched from a chair in the corner with a calm smile, unhurried. Ellie allowed herself to be carried away, although deep down, the letter still burned in her memory. When they left the shop, evening was already falling. Mark took her to the shoe store, where he bought her a pair of soft leather shoes, then to the haberdashery, where they chose ribbons and flowers for her hair. In every place, Mark introduced her with pride. "My fiancée, Mrs. Eleanor Davies." The town's women watched them from windows, from doorways, from corners, some with curiosity, others with envy, and some, like Sienna and Chelsea, with a hatred that was beginning to transform into something dangerous. That night, after leaving Ellie at her house, Mark rode back to O'Connell Station. The road crossed a stretch of thick bush, where the gums closed over the track and the moonlight barely penetrated. He was thinking about Ellie, the wedding, the future they would build together, when he heard a noise to his right. A horse emerged from the trees. On it, a man with his face covered by a neck gaiter. Mark immediately stopped his mount, his hand instinctively moving toward the stock whip he carried on his belt. "What do you want?" he asked firmly. The man didn't answer. He just stood there, motionless, like a shadow. Then he spoke in a distorted, low, slow voice. "Mr. O'Connell, someone sent me to give you a message. You are making a mistake. That woman is not what she seems. You should stay away from her before it's too late." Mark tightened the reins. "Who sent you? That doesn't matter. Just heed the advice. There are things you don't know, things she is hiding from you. If you marry that widow, you will regret it for the rest of your life. Get out of here," Mark said coldly. "Before I knock you off that horse and give you a hiding." The man laughed a dry, unpleasant sound. Then he pulled the reins and disappeared into the trees as quickly as he had appeared. Mark remained in the middle of the road, his heart pounding, not from fear, but from fury. He knew who was behind this. He knew the envious women in town weren't going to keep quiet. But what he didn't know was how far they were willing to go. The next day, when Ellie went to wash clothes by the creek near her house, she found something that chilled her. On a rock, by the edge, there was a rag doll. It was dressed with scraps of fabric that resembled the dress Mark had given her, and it had a needle stuck in its chest. Ellie dropped the wet clothes to the ground. She looked around, but there was no one. Only the sound of the water running and the wind moving the willow branches. She took the doll with trembling hands and hid it under her apron. She walked back to the house with weak legs, feeling that something dark was following her. She didn't tell Mark anything when he arrived that afternoon. She didn't tell her children anything. But that night, while the children slept, Ellie sat in the darkness of her kitchen with the letter and the doll on the table, and for the first time since Mark had entered her life, she wondered if she should walk away, if she should give up happiness to protect him, because something told her that this was just beginning, and that whoever was behind all this would not stop until they destroyed her. What Ellie didn't know was that the next day, Mark would receive a visit at the station, a visit that would tell him a lie so well constructed, so believable, that for an instant, even he would doubt the woman he loved. The sun was barely peeking over the high country when 2 riders arrived at O'Connell Station. Mark was in the stables checking his horse's shoes when one of his hands, Jacko, ran in. "Boss, there are 2 women at the gate. They say they need to talk to you. That it's urgent." Mark put down the tool and walked out to the main yard. There was Sienna Harrington and Chelsea Taylor, mounted on rented horses, in clean dresses and faces composed in an expression of concern that seemed rehearsed. They dismounted when they saw him approach. "Mr. O'Connell," Sienna said, in a soft, almost trembling voice. "Forgive us for coming without warning, but we just couldn't stay quiet. It wouldn't be Christian." Mark looked at them with distrust. He knew these women. He knew how they treated Ellie. He knew their presence there wasn't a coincidence. "What do you want?" Chelsea stepped forward, wringing her hands as if it pained her to speak. "Mr. O'Connell, you are a good man, a respected man, and that's why it hurts us so much to have to tell you this. But you need to know the truth about Eleanor Davies before it's too late." "Speak quickly or leave," Mark said coldly. Sienna swallowed as if what she was about to say hurt her. "The widow, she's not who you think. Her husband. the one who died 5 years ago. He didn't die in an accident. Mark felt a fist clench in his chest. What are you saying? She poisoned him, Chelsea blurted out, eyes wide. Slowly, over months. No one knew, because the town doctor was old and didn't do the examination properly. But my auntie used to clean their house, and she saw things. She saw Ellie give him strange teas, how the man got sicker and sicker, how she acted as if nothing was wrong. Mark stared at them, looking for any sign of a lie on their faces, but they were well prepared. They spoke with conviction. My friend is right, Sienna added with fake tears glistening in her eyes. And there's more. After he died, Ellie kept everything: the house, the insurance money, the land the man had near Tamora. But when the deceased's brothers went to claim what was theirs, she chased them off with a stick, literally with a broom handle. There are witnesses. No one talks about this because they are afraid of her, Chelsea whispered, taking a step closer. They say she knows about bush magic. That's why you are so blinded. Mr. O'Connell, I swear by the Virgin Mary that we don't come here with bad intentions. We just want to protect you before you make a mistake you can't undo. Mark felt something cold run down his back, not because he believed them, but because the lie was so well constructed, with so many details, that for an instant, a very brief instant, a shadow of doubt crossed his mind. Get off my property, he said in a low, dangerous voice. Now. But Mr. O'Connell. Now. The two women backed away, frightened by the tone of his voice. They quickly mounted their horses and trotted away. But before disappearing down the road, Sienna shouted one last thing. Ask her about her husband, and you'll see I'm right. Mark stood in the middle of the yard with his fists clenched and his jaw tight. Jacko approached cautiously. Boss, those old cows are pure venom. Don't listen to them. I know, Mark said, but in his voice was something that hadn't been there before. A small crack, a tiny doubt that he himself hated to feel. That afternoon, when he went to visit Ellie, she immediately noticed that something was wrong. Mark was quieter than usual. He looked at her differently, as if he were studying her. They were sitting outside the house in two old wooden chairs, watching Ethan and Lily play with a deflated ball in the yard. The sky was turning orange, and the air smelled of wood smoke from the neighboring houses. Ellie, Mark finally said, without looking at her, I want you to tell me about your husband. She tensed. Why? Because I'm going to marry you, and I want to know you, know your past. Ellie felt a knot in her throat. She knew that day would come, but she didn't expect it now, not with that tone in his voice. His name was Ray. She began in a low voice. He worked in construction. He was a good man, hard-working, but 6 years ago, he started to get sick. At first, we thought it was the flu, then something worse. The doctors didn't know what it was. He faded away slowly, until one day, he didn't wake up. How did he get sick? The question was direct, too direct. Ellie looked at him with wide eyes. I don't know. The doctor said it was something in his blood, an infection they couldn't cure in time. And you never suspected anything? Ellie felt the world stop. What are you asking me, Mark? He finally looked at her, and in his eyes was something she had never seen before. Doubt. Today, 2 women from town came to tell me things. Ugly things about you, about your husband. Ellie paled. What things? That you killed him? That you poisoned him? The silence that followed was absolute. Even the children stopped playing and turned toward them, sensing the tension in the air. Ellie stood up slowly, her legs trembling. Her voice came out as a broken whisper. And you believe them? Mark ran a hand over his face. No, I didn't believe them. But you have a doubt. Tears began to roll down Ellie's cheeks. You doubt me. Ellie, just go now. She took a step back, her arms crossed over her chest, as if she wanted to protect herself. If you have to ask me if I killed my husband, then you don't know me. And if you don't know me, you shouldn't marry me. Ellie, wait. Go. Mark stood there with his hand extended toward her, watching the woman he loved collapse in front of him. Ethan and Lily ran to their mother, hugging her, looking at Mark with fear and confusion. Ellie, But she had gone inside the house, locking the door behind her. Mark heard the sound of the bolt, and then, muffled by the weatherboard walls, the sound of her crying. He stood there in the empty yard, with the sun setting behind him, feeling that he had made the biggest mistake of his life, not for asking, but for doubting, for letting the venom of those women enter his heart, even for a second. He mounted his horse and returned to the station in silence, his mind reeling over everything. Sienna and Chelsea's words, Ellie's reaction, the doubt he himself felt. But when he arrived at the station, Jacko was waiting for him, his face pale. "Boss, you have to see this." He led him to the stables. Over the door, pinned with a knife, was a piece of fabric. It was from the blue dress Mark had given Ellie, and next to it, written with charcoal on the timber, was a message. "Marry the widow, and everything will burn. Your station, your cattle, your name. This is the final warning." Mark tore off the fabric and the knife in fury, feeling the rage burn within him. There was no more doubt, no more confusion, only a certainty. Someone was trying to destroy what he and Ellie were building, and he wasn't going to allow it. "Jacko, saddle the horses. We're going to town now." "Boss, it's already dark. Now." Mark knew who he was going to look for. He knew who was behind all this, and when he found them, they would pay. But what Mark didn't know was that while he was riding toward Mudgee with 3 of his most loyal men, something was happening in Ellie's house that would change everything. Someone had entered through the back window. Someone was rummaging through her things, and when Ellie came out of the room upon hearing a noise, she found herself face to face with a hooded figure holding something in their hand that made her gasp. The property deed to her house, the only document that proved the land was hers, and next to it, a box of lit matches. Ellie felt her heart stop. The hooded figure was smaller than a man. From the way she moved, from the slender hands holding the matchbox, she immediately knew it was a woman. "Don't scream," the voice said from beneath the hood. It was Chelsea. Ellie recognized the tone, the accent. "If you scream, I'll burn everything. The deed, the house. You, if necessary. What do you want?" Ellie whispered, feeling Ethan and Lily stir in the room, waking up from the noise. "I want you to disappear, to leave town, to give up Mark O'Connell, to stop pretending to be something you're not." Chelsea took out a match and lit it. The flame illuminated her face, showing eyes bright with hatred and envy. "You don't deserve any of this. None of it. You're plain, poor, insignificant, and yet you took the only man worthwhile in this entire region. How dare you?" "I didn't take anyone," Ellie said in a trembling but firm voice. "He chose me, and that's what you can't stand." "Shut up." Chelsea brought the match close to the property deed paper. "Tomorrow morning, you are going to tell Mark that it was all a mistake, that you don't love him, that you only wanted his money, and then you are going to leave Mudgee, far away, where no one knows you." "And if I don't?" Chelsea smiled cruelly. "Then I burn this paper, and without it, you have nothing, no house, no land. Your late husband's family will claim everything, and you and your children will end up on the street begging for spare change." At that moment, the bedroom door opened, and Ethan came out with a wooden stick in his hands. He was 14, but the way he held that stick, with his shoulders squared and his jaw clenched, was that of a man defending his family. "Drop that and get out of our house," he said in a husky voice. Chelsea turned toward him in surprise. The match was burning down between her fingers. "Stupid kid. This is none of your business. She's my mum. This is my house, and you have no right to be here." For a second, Chelsea hesitated, but then they heard something outside. Horse hooves, many of them, and men's voices. "Ellie!" It was Mark's voice, powerful and desperate. "Ellie, I'm here!" Chelsea paled. The match went out, burning her fingers. She let out a yelp and dropped the property deed to the floor. She tried to run toward the back window, but Ethan blocked her path with the stick. Ellie lunged for the paper and grabbed it just before Chelsea could stomp on it. The main door burst open. Mark entered like a storm, followed by Jacko and 2 other men. He saw Chelsea against the wall, Ellie on the floor with the deed in her hands, Ethan with the stick raised. He understood everything in a second. "What the hell is going on here?" Chelsea tried to compose herself, pulling off the hood and feigning innocence. "Mr. O'Connell, thank God you arrived. This woman, she attacked me. I just came to—" "Liar," Ethan yelled. "She came in through the window, tried to steal the deed to the house, and threatened to burn it." "Mum." Mark turned toward Chelsea with a look that made her back away to the wall. "Is that true?" I just—" "Answer me," Chelsea swallowed, feeling fear tighten her throat. "Someone had to do it. Someone had to open your eyes. Mr. O'Connell, that woman is not good for you. She is not. Where is Sienna?" The question fell like a hammer. Chelsea shut her mouth. "I asked you where your friend is, because I know the 2 of you are behind everything. The letters, the threats, the man who intercepted me on the road, everything." Chelsea began to tremble. "We only wanted to protect you." "Protect me?" Mark took a step closer. His voice was low, dangerous, breaking into my fiancée's house like thieves, threatening to burn her out, lying about her to separate me from her side. But it's not fair, Chelsea burst out, tears of rage rolling down her cheeks. We are pretty. We are young. We deserve to be chosen. Not her, she is nothing. The silence that followed was absolute. Mark looked at Chelsea with something that wasn't fury. It was pity. That is exactly the problem, he said with a tired voice. You think external beauty is the only thing that matters? That being pretty gives you the right to everything? But you never understood that without character, without kindness, without humility, that beauty is worthless. And that's why, even if you are the prettiest woman in all of Mudgee, no man of value will ever choose you. Chelsea opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Mark's words had pierced her like knives. Jacko, take her outside. Tomorrow morning, she and Sienna will appear before the magistrate for trespassing, threats, and defamation. And if they go near Ellie or her children again, they will get to know Bathurst jail. Jacko took Chelsea by the arm and led her out of the house. She offered no resistance. She was broken. When they were left alone, Mark knelt in front of Ellie, who was still on the ground with the property deed clutched to her chest. The children were hugging her, still scared. Forgive me, Mark said, his voice broken. Forgive me for doubting you, for letting their poison enter my head, for hurting you when the only thing I've wanted from the beginning is to protect you. Ellie looked at him with tear-filled eyes. Mark, no. Let me finish. He took her hands in his. I know you. I know who you are. I know your worth, and I should never, ever have asked you those things. What happened to your husband? What happened in your life before we met? It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what we are now, together. Ellie began to cry. Not from sadness, but from relief, from liberation, from love. I was scared, she whispered. Scared that it was all a lie, that you would leave, that you would dump me. Never. Do you hear me? Never. Mark hugged her right there on the dirt floor of her humble house, surrounded by her children, who also began to cry, not from fear, but from happiness. Outside, Mark's men found Sienna hiding among the trees, waiting for Chelsea. They arrested her too. The two women were taken that same night before the Mudgee magistrate, who, upon hearing the testimonies of Ellie, Ethan, and Mark's workers, sentenced them to pay a hefty fine and perform community service for 6 months. But more than the legal punishment, it was the social punishment that destroyed them. The whole town knew what they had done, and the respect they once had for their beauty disappeared forever. For the next 2 weeks, Mark did not leave Ellie alone for a moment. He sent 2 of his men to guard the house day and night. He took Ellie to Sydney, to the best clinic in the region, not to change her, but so she could receive the care she had never had. They fixed the teeth she had lost due to malnutrition, treated her sun-damaged skin, and taught her to take care of herself, to value herself. But more important than that, Mark taught her to believe in herself. He showed her day after day, with words and with actions, that she was valuable, that she was beautiful, that she was loved. And something extraordinary began to happen. Ellie not only healed on the outside, she healed on the inside. Her posture changed, her gaze became firmer. Her genuine, bright smile returned, and when she walked through the town on Mark's arm, she no longer lowered her head, she held it high. The wedding day arrived with a clear sky and a radiant sun. The ceremony was held in the town church in front of all the neighbors. Ellie entered wearing the dress that Mrs. Cooper had sewn with so much love. A simple but elegant white gown, with delicate embroidery on the neck and sleeves. She wore her hair down for the first time in years, falling in soft waves over her shoulders. And on her face, now cared for and rested, something shone that everyone could see. Beauty. A beauty that had always been there, waiting to be recognized. The murmurs ran through the church. That's Ellie? I can't believe it. She's gorgeous. Sienna and Chelsea were in the last pew, obligated to attend as part of their community service punishment. When they saw Ellie walk down the aisle, transformed, radiant, chosen, their faces broke. All their pride, all their arrogance crumbled in that instant. Mark waited at the altar with shining eyes. When Ellie reached his side, he whispered in her ear, I knew the world would eventually see you as I always did. The ceremony was short but emotional. When the priest declared them husband and wife, the church erupted in applause. Ethan and Lily cried tears of happiness. The graziers, the workers, the humble folk who had always looked at Ellie with respect, celebrated as if the victory were their own, because in a way, it was. It was the victory of character over appearance, of humility over pride, of true love over false expectations. After the ceremony, Mark took Ellie to O'Connell Station. When they entered through the main gates, all the workers were lined up on both sides of the drive, clapping and shouting congratulations. Ellie couldn't stop smiling, couldn't stop crying, couldn't believe this was her life now. That night, during the celebration in the station yard, with country music playing and plenty of food for everyone, Mark took Ellie's hand and led her to the center of the dance floor. They began to dance under the stars, surrounded by friends, family, and people who truly loved them. And as they danced, Ellie looked at her husband and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me when no one else did." Mark squeezed her tighter. "You don't have to thank me. I only recognized what was always there." The party continued until dawn, but as the sun began to rise over the high country, painting the sky pink and orange, something happened that no one expected. A rider arrived at a gallop down the main road, covered in dust, his horse foaming. It was one of the workers Mark had left guarding Ellie's old house in Mudgee. He dismounted quickly and ran toward Mark, his face pale. "Boss, you have to come. Now. We found something." "What happened?" The man swallowed, looking at Ellie with a mix of astonishment and fear. "We were reinforcing the foundations of the house, as you ordered, and we dug a little deeper and found something buried, something that changes everything. There's a chest full of gold and documents. Documents with Mrs. Davies' father's name on them. Titles to land, lots of land. Boss, Mrs. Davies is not just a poor widow, she's the heir to a fortune no one knew existed." The trip back to Mudgee was fast and tense. Mark, Ellie, Jacko, and 3 other workers rode under the rising sun, kicking up dust on the road. Ellie rode in silence, her hands clenched on the reins, not understanding what could be buried under her house. Her father had died when she was 12. He was a quiet, hard-working man who earned a living as a drover, moving goods between the Sierra towns. He never mentioned land, never spoke of gold. When they arrived at the little weatherboard cottage, 4 men were already digging around the foundations. The hole was deep, almost 2 meters, and there, between the damp earth and the stones, was the chest. It was made of dark wood, reinforced with iron, covered in rust and compacted dirt. They lifted it with ropes and placed it on a tarp in the yard. Mark looked at Ellie. "Do you want to open it?" She nodded, her heart pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. She knelt in front of the chest. The lock was rusty, but not secured. She lifted the lid with trembling hands. Inside, there were 3 things. First, bundles of thick cloth which, when opened, revealed many old gold coins, perhaps from Ellie's grandfather's time, from previous inheritances. Second, a wad of papers rolled up and tied with a string. And third, a letter written in faded ink, with her father's unmistakable handwriting. Ellie took the letter with trembling fingers and began to read aloud. "My dearest Ellie, if you are reading this, it is because I am no longer with you. Forgive me for not having told you anything while I was alive, but I wanted to protect you from the greed of others. Your grandfather, my father, owned vast grazing land between Temora and Bathurst, but when he died, my brothers betrayed me, falsified documents, and took everything from me. I was only able to rescue these original titles and the gold you see here. I hid it so that one day, when you were older, you could claim what is yours. The land is in your name in the old Sydney registry. Don't let anyone take what belongs to you. You are stronger than you think. With love, your father." Silence fell over the yard like a heavy blanket. Ellie dropped the letter and covered her face with her hands. She didn't know whether to cry or laugh. For years, she had lived in poverty, humiliated, despised, believing she had nothing. And all that time, beneath her feet was the proof that she was the heir to a considerable fortune. Mark knelt beside her and hugged her. "Your father protected you even after death." "I didn't know anything," Ellie whispered. "Nothing. My mother died when I was little. My father never talked about this, and when Ray and I got married, we lived hand to mouth. I never, ever imagined." "It doesn't matter now," Mark said firmly. "The important thing is that now you know, and we are going to reclaim all that land." Over the next few days, Mark hired the best lawyer in Sydney. They took the documents to the land registry, and after reviewing the old files, the lawyer confirmed what the letter said. Eleanor Davies, daughter of Ernest Davies, was the legitimate owner of 300 hectares of fertile grazing land between Temora and Bathurst, land that her uncles, her father's brothers, had been exploiting illegally for more than 20 years. The news spread throughout the region like wildfire. The poor widow, the woman everyone despised, had not only married Mudgee's richest station owner, she was also the heir to a fortune of her own. The same people who had humiliated her now looked at her with a mixture of shame, envy, and astonishment. Sienna and Chelsea, who were performing their community service, sweeping the town streets under the scorching sun, found out while resting under a tree. When one of the neighbors told them, with barely disguised malice, that Ellie now owned more land than any other family in the region, both fell silent. There were no tears, no rage, only a deep emptiness, the crushing certainty that they had destroyed their own lives through envy. "It was never out of pity," Chelsea murmured, looking at the ground. "Mark truly loved her, and it turns out she was always more than us. In every sense." Sienna didn't answer. She just kept sweeping with dry eyes and shattered pride. 2 months later, when the lawyer won the case and the lands were officially restituted to Ellie, Mark organized a gathering at O'Connell Station. He invited all the graziers who worked Ellie's land, the Mudgee neighbors, and the local authorities. He wanted everyone to know the truth, for everyone to see who his wife truly was. Ellie entered the main hall of the station, dressed in a simple but elegant olive green suit, her hair pulled back in a low bun. She no longer looked like the stooped, frightened woman of months ago. She walked with her back straight, her gaze firm, the calm smile of someone who had found her place in the world. Mark introduced her to everyone. "This is my wife, Eleanor O'Connell, née Davies, owner of 300 hectares of land, mother of 2 extraordinary children, and the bravest, most generous woman I have ever met. And I want you all to know that the decisions about that land will be made by her, because they are hers, not mine." The graziers, many of whom had worked that land for years without knowing it, belonged to Ernest Davies' daughter, stood up and applauded. Some cried because Ellie, in her first act as owner, had announced that she would not fire them, that they would continue to work the land, but now with fair contracts, with decent wages, with respect. "My father loved this land," Ellie said with a clear, unwavering voice. "And I am going to honor his memory by treating it with the same love, and by treating those who work it with the dignity they deserve." The applause was deafening. Ellie looked at Mark and saw in his eyes the same pride he had seen the day he proposed to her. But now it was different. Now Ellie didn't need someone else to validate her. She knew who she was. She knew her worth. The following months brought more changes. Ellie, with Mark's help, modernized the land, built houses for the workers, and opened a small school for the grazier's children, and little by little, her name became synonymous not with poverty or humiliation, but with justice and generosity. A year after the wedding, Ellie walked through the Mudgee Square with Lily by the hand. The girl, now 12, was studying at a private school near Bathurst. Ethan, 15, worked on the station, learning the ranching trade alongside Mark. Life had changed in ways none of them would have imagined. The townswomen, the same ones who used to whisper when Ellie passed, now greeted her with respect. Some even asked her advice on their own problems. Ellie listened to them patiently, without resentment, without arrogance. Because the money and the land hadn't changed who she was, they had only revealed what was always there. She walked past old Bob's general store. The old storekeeper came out to greet her with a smile. "Mizus. O'Connell, good to see you. How is Mr. Mark?" "Well, old Bob, thank you very much. You know, I always knew you were special. Ever since you were a little girl and came with your father to buy sugar, I always knew it." Ellie smiled without saying anything. She knew old Bob had never defended her when the women mocked her. But she also knew that holding a grudge only poisoned the soul. So she nodded kindly and kept walking. At the end of the square, sitting on the same bench where they used to sit to laugh and criticize, were Sienna and Chelsea. They had already completed their community service punishment, but neither had found a husband. Neither had found the golden future they believed they deserved for being pretty. Sienna now worked in a clothing store in Orange. Chelsea helped in her aunt's bakery. They lived ordinary, gray lives, haunted by the reputation of what they had done. When they saw Ellie approach, both lowered their gaze, but Ellie stopped in front of them. Lily looked at her confused, but Ellie squeezed her hand gently. "Good afternoon," Ellie said in a calm voice. Sienna looked up in surprise. "Mrs. O'Connell, I just wanted to tell you that I hold no grudge. What happened, happened. I hope you have learned, and I hope you find peace." Chelsea opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She could only nod. With moist eyes, Sienna swallowed and murmured a barely audible thank you. Ellie continued walking with Lily by her side. The girl looked at her with admiration. "Mum, why were you nice to them after everything they did to you?" Ellie stopped and knelt to be at her daughter's height. "Because resentment only harms you, my love. They have already lost. They lost the opportunity to be happy by being obsessed with something they never had. I, on the other hand, won. I gained a wonderful husband. I recovered what was mine. And above all, I learned to value myself. That is the true victory." Lily hugged her tightly, and together they continued walking through the town that once despised Ellie, but which now looked at her with respect and in some cases, with genuine admiration. That night at O'Connell Station, Ellie and Mark had dinner on the patio under the stars. The children were already asleep. The air smelled of jasmine and damp earth. Mark took Ellie's hand across the table. "Do you know what I love most about you?" he asked softly. "What?" "That you never changed. With everything that happened, the money, the land, the towns. Respect, you remained the same woman I met. Humble, generous, strong." Ellie smiled, squeezing his hand. "That's because you taught me to see myself as I truly am, not as others saw me. And that is priceless." They stayed silent, enjoying the night, the chirping of the crickets, the peace they had built together. And while the stars shone over the high country near Mudgee, Eleanor O'Connell, née Davies, the woman who was once considered the ugliest in town, the one who was humiliated, despised, and rejected, rested in the arms of the man who loved her not because she had become beautiful, but because she always had been. And finally, the whole world had seen it. Character endures, kindness is rewarded, and true love recognizes what others never wanted to see. This story teaches us that the true worth of a person is never in what the eyes see, but in what the heart holds. Physical beauty fades, pride crumbles. But character, kindness, and dignity remain forever. Ellie was despised, humiliated, and rejected, but she never lost her essence. And when the time came, life returned everything the world had taken from her. So remember, no matter how many look down on you today, if you keep your heart clean and your dignity intact, time and God will take care of putting everyone in their place. What you sow in silence, you will reap with honor. If you were moved by this story, subscribe to our channel, because the next stories will be even better. God bless you.